Frank Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the White Plains Youth Bureau and Chair of the New York Fathering Conference Committee. And this is our 8th annual conference, and this is the second session of a 3-part series looking at how to improve the health and safety of our community. And we have a large conference committee. There are about 30 some odd people who serve on this committee and have pulled this together. People from the Westchester County Department of Social Services, Commissioner Leonard Towns, Ernest McFadden, and Dr. Damia Harris-Matten. We have people from community-based agencies, youth bureau agencies, and if I start naming everyone, I'm going to miss someone, but we'll all wade into this conversation because it's critically important that we begin to identify solutions to what we know is a major problem in our country and in the world. And no one can say that they are immune from this issue. Teen violence affects everyone. And so that's why we're here this evening. And we want to thank all of our panelists for agreeing to be a part of this conversation, because it's important that, one, people who are in the fight, in the struggle, give voice to how we reconcile, how do we resolve the issues that we face. I also want to say that, you know, in addition to community leaders and community-based agencies and social service organizations and leaders, we also have a grandpa group. Our Grandpas United, they're writing off, they're funding this effort, and so we thank our grandpa community members who are part of our conversation this evening. So again, I want to thank everyone for participating. Our Commissioner of DSS, Leonard Towns, is not with us this evening, so I want to welcome you here on behalf of the Commissioner of the Westchester County Department of Social Services. He's away at a conference. So we're going to begin with our panel. I'm going to introduce to you our moderator for our panel discussion. His name is Commissioner Terrence Jackson. He's the Commissioner of the Greenberg Theodore Young Community Center here in Greenberg, New York. And it's a comprehensive agency that serves our community. And he provides services, wraparound services in the town of Greenberg, doing an amazing job of serving children, youth, and families, adults, with important social services, economic programs. So I'm going to turn this portion over to Terrence, and he's going to introduce young people. And good evening, Mayor Rainey. It's good to see you. Yeah, Mayor Rainey.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening.
Yes, and we're going to turn this over to Terrence, and he's going to run with our youth voice participation. And Terrence, take it away.
Thank you so much, Frank, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this important topic. But especially, thank you, young people that are with us, because this is tonight about you all, what you all think, and your perspective on what's happening in our world, the world that you will take over one day and hopefully help keep us all safe. This session is on the youth perspective. And I'd first like to quickly introduce two people that are very much in the fight of allowing the youth, today's youth voice to be heard and helping them along the way. First, we have Ms. Yocasta Jimenez, who is the CEO and founder of Teens Under Construction. She deals with students by using hip hop therapy and deals with students in the ages of 13 to 25. She will be along with our panel after this and will be introduced a little bit more. But she is one that has brought a few of her students with us today to have this conversation. As well, we have Ms. Joanne Dunn, Executive Director of the Westchester County Youth Shelter. that deals with students from the age of 16 to 21. And it takes an interesting perspective on what our youth are thinking, whether they might have been incarcerated before, have not, and trying to make sure that they are not ever again. So I thank you very much for being with us and bringing some students with us along the way. Violence, specifically gun violence. You pretty much, unfortunately, cannot listen to the evening news, get an email, a warning on your phone or something without gun violence being surely across the United States, but statistics show it is even more prevalent here in New York and definitely in New York City. And some people wouldn't tell you we're not that far from New York City, and it does translate. Using the student perspective, I'd really like to talk about gun violence with youth. Statistics again, the youth are the ones unfortunately being shot and killed the most. But then you have another side of it where we also have youth getting the guns and using the guns. Both of these paradigms are something we'd like to discuss today. We, the adults here, would like to hear from the students on what is going through your mind. What do you see day in and day out? And your possible thoughts on solutions that we might be able to implement and use to move further down this road of ending the killing. So my first question is pretty broad, and I'd like to keep a broad perspective and then narrow down into this. But again, I would also like to say at this point, this is a safe space. You are allowed to say whatever you feel necessary to say. And if you don't, you'd rather not, and you get called upon, or in any moment you feel you need to pull back, please feel free to do so. This is a safe space. So my first question to some of, well, I'd like to open up quickly, if I could. We don't have too long for this, unfortunately, but let's open up to Miss Yogi, as she's more widespreadly known. A brief statement you might have about anything I've said and how you can see the students best helping us. Miss Yogi.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Yocasta Jimenez, also known as Miss Yogi. In the work that we do here at Teens Under Construction, we work directly with the youth, whether they're incarcerated or whether they're in some kind of program or whether they seek us on their own, right? And usually the issues for them, based on the work that we do with them, usually comes from a lack of understanding, a lack of communication, right? We truly believe that if every child had one trusted adult that can guide them in the right way, it would change so many things. And for a lot of our youth, I think that that's where the disconnect is at. My partner, Shamar, and I are often told by the youth that we work with that adults are not ready to have uncomfortable conversations, right? And that's their perspective. When that's their perspective, we have to listen to them, right? And as a school social worker, which is, my other gig, I think we're consistently asking kids what we should do, and then they respond and we don't listen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You're absolutely right. Perspective is your reality until otherwise proven. To that same question, if you would, Ms. Dunn, please share a brief insight.
So I would have to concur with Miss Yogi. I think many of us want to have the conversation with young people, but don't want to accept the new phenomenon that is happening with young people. And I think beyond just the crime that is happening in our areas, young people live under different circumstances, different times than we have. Like if you're bullied in school, when I was bullied in school, probably in my day, it wasn't happening on social media and hundreds and thousands of people weren't accessing it. And so I think young people, it's not only about what's happening, but I think we have to understand that when you're in this day and age and you're a young person, and if you can't sleep where you live at in a place that you call home, and you have to always kind of keep your eye and ears open, then of course, you know what? It becomes survival of the fittest, only the strong survive. and you have to do what you need to do. And so here at the youth shelter, we work directly with justice involved and justice impacted youth. And one of the things is we say, we don't care what brought you to our doors. If it was a crime that brought you to our doors, so what? What we care about is how you leave our doors. And that's the most important. And so from our young people, we learn every day about why they carried a gun, why they kept a gun in their possession. And for us, it's not about taking this knowledge to kind of, oh, we got you, but it's really like, how do we take you and now turn you to be a power for good in your community? And so our young people will really talk to you not about what is happening, but how they are channeling their lived experiences to really be powers for good in the community and really try to help move the narrative. And what you'll see and what you will understand, a lot of this is system and socioeconomic issues that are impacting these young people, right? If there's no jobs where you live at, if there's no adequate housing where you live at, then you're gonna do what you need to do to get by. And so you will see that and you will understand that. And so for us as adults, I think that a lot of times, like Jordan would tell me, we need to just shut up and listen. And so I'm glad to not only be here, but to really shut up and listen.
Thank you so much. And that is exactly what we're going to do. To that point, I'm unable to see all of the students that might be with us. So I'm going to ask you, when ready, you can raise your hand and wave it. And Tom will see you and can unmute you and bring you up to the screen as well. But I'll open it up, this first question up for any of our students. Can you tell us, bring us into your world, if you will? As Joanne just brought out, the fact that guns in backpacks at school, and someone feeling that they have to carry that for protection. How much is that an everyday occurrence for someone you know, and living with that? And how does that possibly make you feel in the school environment? Anyone that could possibly speak to that? Tom, let me know if we don't have anybody and if nobody wants to jump in. And again, feel comfortable at any point in time.
I see.
But I am trying to see the students to possibly answer if
We have Jasmine Cabrera, who is a part of the youth shelter program in Westchester. She is excitedly waving her hand to answer the question.
Wonderful.
So she'll kick it off for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
She's under.
in my time, there was like, if you think about it, the kids, they have like toy guns, like Nerf guns and like all the other play toy guns that they have for little kids. So I don't know if it's like contradicting, or I don't want to say that either, because like they put out toys for certain kids like guns, right? Everybody watches the Proud Family. Now there's a gay person in the Proud Family. So stuff from Black when I was a kid is definitely different from now. I'm 24, but when I was a kid in the Proud Family, there wasn't a gay person in there. Not that, you know, I'm homophobic or anything, or I have a problem with gay people, but now society's making certain things okay for kids. So like for Nerf guns, they're making it okay for us kids to hold Nerf guns. I mean, we don't know what the real meaning is when our parents is like, hey, you want a Nerf gun? You know, I can get you a Nerf gun. You can go outside and play with the Nerf gun and shoot at each other and point it at each other. It's like, that's kind of what we, but I don't feel safe sometimes because back in my day, we weren't shooting people. Like people my age, we weren't doing that. Like we were listening to kids' music, playing with dolls, going out, shooting people just wasn't in our nature. Kind of, it was more of like the other people that are older than me. But it's really scary to say that a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old could just walk up to me and possibly shoot me one day because they don't like the way I'm looking at them, or they don't like the kind of clothes I have on, or they don't like my opinion about something that they said. And like I said, I'm 24. I'm not old. I'm not 30 or anything like that, but it's kind of scary because I have my son. My son is 8 months. I have nephews. I have brothers who kind of played with guns too when they were little, and seeing that from my side, I have 2 brothers. So Nerf guns and riding the bikes and being just rough in general as a boy was always there. My mom was a single mom. It was just her. She raised all of us. So being around them, it's like wow, they took the Nerf guns very serious. I remember one day my mom was so upset at my brother because he brought a slingshot to school. I mean, but that's a toy. In his eyes, that's a toy. That's something that like you could buy at a store and it's okay to play with. So it's like when you grow up now, I mean, it's sad that as teenagers think it's okay to go and shoot people without no remorse, but that's actually very sad too. That kind of brings up a very scary topic because, there can be little 7-year-olds walking around with pistols and like, hey, I'm gonna blow your head off if you push me the wrong way, or if you say your ABCs the wrong way. That's kind of very scary. And like I said, I have a son, so it makes me more scared. And I just feel like we need to have just a little bit more activities. Because Mount Vernon, if you look at it, New Rochelle, they used to have the paintball, the bumper cars, the movies, stuff like that for kids to do. I feel like maybe that'll help too, but also sometimes you can't do that no more. Even with you doing something nice for the community, it always turns out to be something negative. And I just feel like if we put more positivity out there, we won't have to worry about our boys or even my son, better yet, growing up talking about, Mom, I'm going to shoot you here, bang, bang. And then maybe when he's like 18, 19, I have to go to court because he had a gun charge. He's in his head, he's like, my mom got me a Nerf gun, so it's something I can play with. So why not go buy an actual gun and shoot somebody? I mean, it's a sad narrative, but when you think about it, the companies, they make certain things and toys for kids to get brainwashed with. Even the cartoons, they brainwash the kids. It's very
You
controversial.
are absolutely correct. Violence has been normalized. It's in everything. It's on television. Monday nights, I believe CBS, FBI this, FBI that, FBI the next one. It's tough to watch TV without seeing it, but our children are seeing it. Music today is very much like that. So it is very much ingrained, unfortunately, in our culture at the moment. Another student, if you will, a different perspective, if you will, on how it may have become normal to you and your peers, and how they're using it, and what fears you might have because of it. Anyone else, please? This is your time.
Hi, hi, my name is Abdul Kumara. I'm from the YSOW program. I feel like it's the environment and no jobs, no things for the youth to do, and the reason why I said is the environment, because most of us, like, if back to what Ms. Dunn said, like, if you don't got something to eat, a place to stay, or if you got to protect yourself, you know what I'm saying? Because I ain't gonna let somebody else go kill me, so I'm gonna carry the gun. And I said the environment too, because people make it look cool to carry guns or to go do something to somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like back in the days, if you do something to somebody, your mom gonna be like, yo, don't do that. Nowadays, somebody do something to you, they're gonna be like, yo, you better go do something. Or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a young man sitting next to you. Anything to add?
I also would agree with the environment. It's the peer pressure of the peers in the environment putting it on the person. So how I would say about that. And also my name is Jaquan Wallace. I'm here. I'm also with the YSOW. It is like I said, I agree with Alo on the environment, because our environment is not like, all right, boom. How can I explain this?
It's not like, you know what I'm saying? You gotta be a wolf or a sheep. You know?
You gotta be a wolf or a sheep. It's like, it's either you gonna either let them take you into the streets, or you're gonna find a better way out of the streets. But not all the time you're gonna find a better way out of the streets, because all the negative going on in our environment.
And they ain't gonna tell you the good and bad side, you know what I'm saying? What come with it to go pick up a gun. Like little kids gonna pick up a gun and whatever, you know what I'm saying? They don't know what come with it. You could kill somebody, you could do time, you know what I'm saying? Or somebody else could hurt you, you could hurt yourself.
Can
With that,
I
if you will.
add to that, Terrence? I just want to
Please.
add, and I appreciate you guys being open and honest, and really, like Terrence said, this is a safe space and we want you to share. Not that this is information, but this is going to help us as we try to pivot to solutions. And I so appreciate my young peers, my young people, and any young person that is on this call that is really sharing their true raw self to really try to help us chart solutions for this. So I wanted to say that. But I'll also add, because Dr. Damia Harris, Madden, myself, Ernest McFadden, about a year plus ago, we had did a closed session forum with our young people, with some of the young people here at the shelter. And we really said, like, you know, tell us, why is gun violence so exacerbated in certain communities, and, you know, what's happening? And when we got to the heart of why young people were carrying, you know, it really was, again, the induced poverty, the trauma, the, you know, inadequacies in public safety, and the school system, and the failed school system. And so when we started to get to the core of like what young people need to really thrive, and how do we, you know, pivot from gun violence to really going, and what, you know, a lot of our young people said, there's nothing in our community for us. Like, if the Boys and Girls Club closes at 5 o'clock, gun violence is happening peak hours between 6 and 1 and 2. Where are we supposed to go, and what are we supposed to do? And then they also said to us, like, yo, Miss Dunn, like, I've never been camping. I've never been like horseback riding. I've never experienced these things because I've always had to sleep in the bathtub just to make sure if there was a shooting that I didn't get shot in my house. Like, these are real circumstances that young people have to live through. And while we might say Westchester is a very, you know, wealthy, you know, county, the disparities in the county are real. And where those communities are poverty stricken, young people have to sleep in a bathtub just so they don't get shot through the wall in their apartment. Like, you know, so when you get to the heart of these young people, it's like, you understand that they not necessarily wanted to carry a gun, but like they said, it's either you're gonna be the wolf or the sheep, right? You're gonna got or be get, you know, you're gonna get or be gotten. Like, so you start to understand the parables when you get to certain things, because as young people, you're just trying to survive. You're just trying to survive in your circumstances and in the systems that have kind of plagued you. And so I just wanted to add that, because when we got to the heart of it, young people don't want to necessarily live like this. They're not born like this, but they had to be survived like this because of certain scenarios and situations. And so appreciate my guys and my gals for really speaking truth to power tonight and giving them your raw self. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that takes me to a next point of that paradigm, if you will. You are trying to protect yourself, but at the same point, you're opening yourself up to numerous other things. There's a young man I know of that unfortunately got caught carrying a gun for protection. But now that young person will be doing time for just having that gun. And it brings up the thought of, in our young people, the frontal lobe being fully developed or not, about the next step. What happens if this happens? What happens next? And how does that help the future? Now, understandably, you have to worry about today before you worry about tomorrow. I get that, but it is still a piece of, is there not another solution? And then we will definitely talk about what else we can do in the environment to give another safe space. So students, if you can talk to that idea of, I've got to do it to them before they do it to me. But even if it doesn't get to that point, you get caught with a gun. And let's be honest, guns are unfortunately easy to find, which is a huge piece of this problem as well. If we can handle that, I'm sure we'd handle a lot of other things.
Got that hand up, Terrence.
Yeah, I see a hand waving heavy, so let me go to him. Go ahead. You're unmuted. Unmuted. Go right ahead.
You wanna go first?
Go ahead, go
You
ahead.
wanna go first?
All right, you said the young man got caught with a gun, he doing time, whatever, you know what I'm saying? I got a question, right, for you now.
Yes.
We rather be dead or do time for a gun?
Right. Like I said, I understand that situation, but it's just one that, and I'm not disagreeing or agreeing with it, but it's the question of, that one move that does help you possibly stay alive at that moment, but there has not been a shooting here. Get to you in a second, Ms. Yogi. Will change, being caught will change the trajectory of your life forever. And my question is the thought process that might go into it. That's what I'm really questioning, not whether to do it or not, but is there a thought process of just me having this may keep me alive, but so many are getting caught with it and then having a much less of a life. So one of you young men, and then to Miss Yogi, please.
Go ahead, bro.
So, all right, boom. The thought process on that, you don't really think when you got that gun. You think after you get caught with the gun, because when you have that gun, your thought process is don't get caught with this gun. This gun is to protect me.
Mhm.
So now when I get caught with the gun, my thought process is, damn, I fucked up. Now, because excuse my language though.
But you
But
good.
because I fucked up, now I gotta go through a process, a rehabilitative process. Now, on that rehabilitative process, it's up to me if I want to change or I want to go back to jail. I don't want to go back to jail, so I'm going to change. So, but it's not everybody doesn't think that way. So some people going to mess up 5, 6 times before they get it right. Or some people going to mess up that one time and that's their life. It's all about the
Thank you.
decisions in the process.
We're gonna do Miss Yogi first, and then I see the young lady that's with Jordan, that Miss Jordan can talk.
So to their point, right? Like I'm on board 1,000,000% with what they said, right? Like in the process of you even getting a gun, like a lot of our kids can't see past tonight, right? They're not even thinking about what's happening tomorrow. They got to get past tonight, right? And if it means me packing in order to get through tonight, I'm going to do that. Am I thinking about going to jail? No. And when I get there, I cross that bridge too when I get to it. For a lot of our kids, when they get to jail, that's the first time that they can actually lay down and relax for a minute, right? Because the streets are tough, right? And so you going to jail that one time, that doesn't necessarily deter them from coming out and having to protect themselves again, right? We as social workers always talk about what is it, fight, flight, or freeze, fight, whatever the words are, right? And that's what we go into, right? We fight, and now we fight. Now we got to get up out of this situation, and now we got to figure this out. So it's always about being in the moment to figure the next step out, and just to tap that off, right? Like he said, right? He was fortunate to find this amazing program. Do you know how much we put our kids and our families through just to give them food stamps, to give them a meal? They got to go through paperwork, and you got to be referred by this person or that person. And by that time, you hungry. And just to what he said, you don't give a fuck about the world right now. You need to eat. You want to rest. You're tired. And all of that all adds up to the explosion that we're living in today. To me, this is not a thing of today. This is something that has been growing and piling, and it just keeps erupting. And every time it gets really bad, we all come together and we're like, oh my God, what do we do, right? And it's like, we were just here a couple of years ago, right? So it's like, we have to be consistently proactive, and there has to be jobs. And for a kid to ask for a meal, it shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be that hard for them to ask for a meal. Yeah.
Understood. The young lady that is
Jasmine.
Jasmine, that was it, I believe.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. So I have a question. So in New York, the self-defense, you can't use that, correct? If you were to, let's just say you were to have a gun and someone puts you in harm's way and you shoot them and you use self-defense, isn't that something you can't use in New
That's
York
correct.
State?
There's
Okay.
no stand your ground law in New York State.
Okay, so boom, that's where I want to touch at. Okay, so how do we get from self-defense to technically not defending yourself? That's what makes sense here. I mean, I don't know, because when you guys were talking about, I was thinking, if New York doesn't have a self-defense law, okay, and let's just say somebody is really actually in harm. Let's just say me, I'm a female. So for the males, you guys can handle yourself the right way. Us females, okay, we're more at like, as a risk for men taking over us or overpowering us. We all know that. Us females, we all know that. So let's just say, for instance, I was actually in true danger and I really needed to get away from somebody and I had a gun and my life was at risk. I mean, like, my life was at risk and I had to defend myself. and I shoot him, how is the law being fair to me if the self-defense law I can't use self-defense? What if I have defense wounds and everything else? What if I have evidence showing that this person was really trying to hurt me and I had to use my gun? I'm going to jail. That's not fair. There's no self-defense law here. So how is that working for us?
Sounds like we got a lawyer in the house. Um,
But there's a lot, Donnie, were you going further? Go ahead. if
Yeah,
you want.
yeah. See, that is a brilliant insight on a number of levels, right? So one of the things that I think helps in this conversation is the education of the systems we're in. The education of them. Who's educating our young people? Who? The questions that the sister is asking, imagine if we had greater insight to these systems and how to navigate better these systems. What Terrence was asking up front, which the brothers eloquently responded, was more about one's life. What is your life? What's the value of your life? What are you willing to give up for your life? And when you have to get out there cold, frigid, frozen, stuck, what do you do with that? What happens next? Who's looking out for you? What were the brothers in those brothers' lives? Who was protecting those brothers? Who was supporting those brothers? And that is what we're really talking about. We're talking about the disintegration of a community, of a neighborhood. Because if those brothers had that, perhaps there might have been a different approach. And what the sister is talking about is true, because in New York State, law has a thing called reciprocity. If you're duking it out and if you're fisting up, one person hits the next, then you go to court and you're adjudicated, right, under those circumstances. However, if someone pulls out a knife and cuts the other individual, you're going to see more time. You're going to see more time. And those are the laws basically in basic English here in New York. And so, you know, I think that what the young people are offering us today should really set the stage on how we move tomorrow. Because I'm looking at young brothers, you know what I'm saying? And it hurts me. It moves me. And I look at the brilliance of the sister, you know, who's bringing out the intricacies of law and fairness. And how come those things don't work for us like that? So it's really, part of this is just sound education, fundamental sound education that we have to bring into our community and start there. There's no easy fix to none of this. There's none. But I can tell you this, there was an era of time in which we had the roughest, toughest individuals who didn't have to go through that, who didn't have to pull out a gat and kill somebody. It was a knuckle up game. It was a knuckle up game, boom, you can live to see another day. You can progress, you can move on. The calculus has changed. So what are we gonna do now?
So with that, let's move to a next step. All of you have brought up programming and things for our youth to do and places for them to be safe. Our two speakers at the moment are running programs that are doing just that, which have funding from state and local government to help with that. We are going to need students like you all that have this history to keep sharing this message and run other and more programs like this to help our youth, because this is where really the rubber meets the road. Funding to have these type of programs and people willing to serve and run these type of programs. It's not an easy solution, and it's exactly why we are here to hear from you all on where the pitfalls are and how we can fill those, but even more so, try and get to the root cause. I speak out to everyone, as I briefly said before, guns are a major issue. And unfortunately, with the NRA as it is, and how they are deeply embedded in government, it's even a stronger issue. But we must continue the fight about gun registration, gun laws. It's a major one. And that's how we have to start moving forward. The topic, and whenever the topic is so big and so broad, and there are so many places to go, it's hard to know where to start and what will be most effective. Definitely our young people that have been incarcerated and are coming out need immediate help as much as possible so that they don't wind up back in there, but they also have a story to tell, because most of them would say, I don't want to do that again, like the young brothers talked about. But let's talk about our younger people, our younger kids that will quickly be our older kids, older youth, adults, and the mentality that they have at the moment and will grow with, but the opportunities they then have. These are the different pieces that we need to try and figure out. And I implore to our students, think about it and share it with us. Share something that you have an idea of how we can change those pieces for the next step, whether it be a quick step at the moment, but hopefully one that's going to change. It's like a puzzle piece. It's like playing chess. Each piece is important, but some are a little more important than others to get you to the other side. And we got to all try and be in it. I know there have been a couple of messages in the chat. Tom, if you could share any that might be relevant at the moment, and then I'll open it back up to anybody that has something to add. Tom or Vito, anything in the chat?
Well, Joanne had something to say, I think, and then I'll look for
Wonderful.
a relevant question.
I was going to say, I mean, you know, one of the things is the youth shelter is an alternative to incarceration programs. So what I will share is that 90% of the young people that we get as far as referrals to serve out their jail time in our facility are young people who have what we call criminal possession of a weapon. And that's where they were caught with carrying a firearm. They are not shooters, they are not known shooters, but they are people that because of this survival mode, like Ms. Yogi said, fight or flight, you know, they've had to survive in this essence in regards to carrying. And so, you know, I think that what Professor Simmons said in regards to us educating our communities in regards to the collateral consequences of carrying a gun and how that could have long-term implications on your life. We have to do a better job as a community to educate our Black and Brown young people about this. We have to do a better job at also allowing young people. And one of the things that I have been here at the shelter really trying to do is because young people who are justice involved, they really get casted as bad characters if we want to be true and honest. Yeah, them bad kids. Oh, I remember my first day I got in an Uber and the Uber dropped me off here at the shelter. He said, oh, that's them bad kids, that's the youth jail. And I said, oh no, we have young scholars, young kings in this building. So let me correct you, sir. Because I think one of the things that our kids, because of their lived experiences, they were casted as bad characters. And one of the things that we have been keen, at least under this leadership, is really elevating the voices of those young people that have lived experience within the justice system. Because if we stop for a minute, young people are not born bad kids, right? There is some trauma, there is something that happened in their life that caused them to make a pivot or caused them to make what we call an impromptu decision, right? And we need to understand the root causes of that. And so here at the youth shelter, we've really been diving into what is that and how do we help change the narrative for that? Because one of the things is that young people can't see themselves in the future if we're always going to cast them as bad characters. So here at the shelter, we don't call them residents, we don't call them inmates. I don't walk around with handcuffs, no guns, no nothing. If you know me, 90% of the time I got on dresses and heels. But my young kings, my young scholars, they're really, and through the work of the county, we actually came up with this program called Youth Cred, which actually allowed our youth credible messengers to have a voice, because many times people will not hear from them. And so we have gave a voice to the voiceless to say, no, we want to hear from you. Because if we're going to design solutions and try to pivot the narrative that's happening in our community, what not best to talk to you? They say the people closest to the problem, guess what? They're closest to the solution. And we can't be about the solution if we're not talking with you and talking about how do we go there. And so one of the things my director of program is keen on saying is that we can't build the boat for you anymore. You remember how we used to say, oh, you know, kids need to be spoken when spoken to, or sit there in the room and be quiet. We can no longer do that. And as a system, as a society, like Professor Simmons said, we've lost the unity in community. We've lost the neighbor in the neighborhood. How many of us don't know our neighbors, our next door neighbors? We need to get back to that. And we need to build this boat with young people of all, you know, of all status, good, bad, or indifferent. But that's how we're going to get to solutions, is really as a village, as a community, as a neighborhood. We're going to have to get there. And one of the things is that we're really championing our young people here at the youth shelter to say that decision that you made. Let me also be clear too. I know I might be rambling for a minute, but I could have been one of these young people. I had everything stacked against me from the beginning. I grew up in poverty. I grew up in a shelter. My dad did 28 years of prison. He went to jail when I was 4. He came home when I was 32. So at any point, I could have been a split decision away from where young people had to. But I have to go back to, somebody said it at the beginning, Miss Yogi. There was, when my mom wasn't there, and when my dad wasn't there, there was a trusted adult that when I felt that I was in crisis, I ran to the woman's house. You know, like, our young people don't have that in us anymore. They don't have someone that they can call in the wee hours of the morning to say, help, I'm in trouble, I'm in crisis. And I think that we as adults, we need to find that in us again. Like, I want to be that person you can lean on and call on at any point in time. Because at the end of the day, all of us were young, dumb, and made some stupid mistakes, right? But thank God we had a second chance and a second opportunity to get it right. And so I just think that we as a system, as a society, we have to not only open our ears, but really be available to our young people in times that they need us. And they need us now more than ever.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. I saw a couple pieces in the chat. And one was, a question I have, and it's for the students. In this talk about something to do, places to go, it has been talked about opening up the high schools, let's just say schools, don't know the level thus far, into the evening. That it'd be a different type of program, possibly for a different type of child. That may have issues with parents being home at a certain time and all of that. And creating other resources such as Teens Under Construction and things like that. From the students, what's your thought if there was a program like that and it taught things not as much as a classroom, but as a new life experience to open up the mind to new opportunities and things like that, but basically to be a safe space in your relatively not so far removed place from the school system. Do you think something like that or any other ideas that you might have work to help our young kids that are there now that will be growing up quickly. Any of our students, and hopefully those that may not have spoken before, if you're willing and able to.
Can students of life speak?
Absolutely.
Listen, I just wanted to have this commentary based on schools, and I mean, I know programs overall are effective in supporting our young people as professionals, right? But I also know that a lot of our young people have a lot of vicarious trauma surrounding schools and the school building itself, the system overall. So to invite programs that have them channel themselves back into a school building in which they're not necessarily connected to as it is, because we do have a large number of young people who just, they won't go to the school, not because it isn't, you know, a great place to be, but because their experience there does not promote them to feel like they're empowered and channeled and really hone in on what they're good at. Because again, we have a system in which, hey, it's English, reading, writing, math, you know, you have to score in these categories, but if you are artsy, if you have any other talents, those are negated because you might have a 60 in English, but you may be a complete scholar in something else. And those skills are not honed in on in the capacity. So it's great to have these things, but again, young people vote with their feet, and they will be in places and spaces that make them feel like they are somebody, they are profound, they are seen. And I think programs, just Teens Under Construction and the Youth Shelter, of course, are places in which young people are seen and they feel seen and heard. You know what I mean? You have
Absolutely.
to really take that time to embed into our young people that they are somebody, because sometimes it is the first time in their life they've heard that they are somebody and they mean something to someone other than, you know, going out to get a check because they have to support paying some bills in the house. A lot of times I tell, and my young people can attest here, I tell them I can't stand adults sometimes, because sometimes the dream in our young people is what keeps us and carries us, right? It helps us move forth in a vision of trying to figure out life. Sometimes adults have taken a stance in space that in their young childhood, they didn't get an opportunity to dream and envision because those dreams were cast away because essential things had to happen. You had to make sure the lights were on, the gas, the electric, everything had to be a tangible, rather than digging deep into your emotional space, digging into what is causing these issues. And if we really stop at the root cause of the problem and handle the fact that a lot of our young people are failed in schools because their parents were not able to support them in the capacity they needed, not because, you know, some parents may have had the finances, but they didn't have the wherewithal to support their emotional needs, to support any other spaces that really help us become holistic human beings. It then says to me, programming in any capacity has to go beyond the building itself. It has to be able to morph into space. And young people, and I say this wholeheartedly, I've serviced young people throughout Westchester County and you know, New York City. Those young people, I may have met them when they were 12, and I'm not dating myself, I promise. But a lot of them are 25 now, and they follow me, not because of anything I had to offer other than a genuine space and place for them from within my heart to make sure that they were seen and they were okay. And I think if we get to that, back to that space of not wanting anything from a young person, but the success of them and whatever that is. I don't care if you want to rap all day. I might have to listen to 16 bars of garbage, but guess what? You made it and I'm gonna hear it, right? Like, I mean, I'm like, oh Lord, my head hurts. But that's okay, because that's what you want to do. I always infamously say we are their agents. They are the drivers of the bus. But a lot of times people want to take the wheel for them and then think that they're going to sit back and, you know, just go for it. And then when they don't come back, you've lost them. You've lost that sense of trust because you tried to control their life. And again, we are only put on this earth on a mission that we are all designed to carry out, whatever your mission may be. But while you're doing that, be the most effective human being you can be by emulating the behaviors in which our young people need to see. I end on this note. We cannot ask our young people to change and do better, and the school system to do better, when parents are arguing with auntie and cousin and them on Facebook and doing all of this vile and vicious social media back and forth and showing how you should not handle situations and how anger can kick itself up just in that space. And then when our young people pick up a gun and they do all of these actions that seem so not logical, can't say that we're not involved in that. Because you are. You emulated a behavior that, again, our young people are watching you. So if you know you are an adult and they're watching you, emulate the best possible behavior that can be, because they will emulate it back because they look up to you. But if they think that you're a piece of garbage because you are arguing just as much as they are and you're showing them that, then that's what you get. So with programming and all of those things, they're not going to turn up to a school building that they feel has failed them as it is. And they're not going to be around adults and young people that they feel have failed them. So we're going to actually create change, blow this place up, and start from the beginning. You cannot keep trying to fill concrete into cracks anymore. It's not going to work. It's not. And you know, my sis over here, she knows. She understands the vibes. I'm the lawyer of the house. This is the second lawyer of the house.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And it really talks to, as someone has put here, you know, the unfortunate lack of hope. There always has to be hope. And the hope is in the resources that need to be put into this. We are coming to the end of this session, but I do want to end, and our young men, if you could give us, with that thought of hope, what might you give us as a closing piece here that, let's say, if you don't, a sibling, a young sibling that you might have, what hope do you have for them in this world that would be better for them? I think you're still muted if you are talking.
What you mean by hope? Like,
that right there is an amazing question, but it's a hope of something better. It's what you dream for. What if you've had this experience thus far in your life, I would think you would not want your younger sibling to have to go through something. You want them to go through something better than that.
I
And
feel
you
like
might dream for them to be or remove them from this specific place to somewhere else to grow. What that is the envision of hope. What might you have for that young person?
because I got a little brother, right? So for my little brother, I'm gonna say a better leader. You know what I'm saying? Because if I feel like if I would have had like a better leader, and I still like now that I'm getting older, you know what I'm saying? I'm seeing who on my side or whatever. I ain't really had better leaders. That's his hope.
People for yourself and him to look up to, or them becoming the type of person that could be that leader. Is it
both?
Well, thank you. That's what I wanted to hear, brother. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, because that's how it translates. When you do have a strong leader in your life, and we have two right here running programs that are doing just that, as well as many of us connected on this call. Our biggest dream, our biggest hope is that we are creating people to follow behind us and do it even better than we did. Ladies and gentlemen, students, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your insight. Thank you so much for sharing as openly as you did. This has been very helpful. This is what I wanted to hear. I hear somebody with possibly a last quick statement, and then I'm going to turn it back to
I
Frank.
do want to say that I am so proud. I do want to share in this
This might be
call
over.
that Jaquan Wallace, he's the young man sitting next to Aloe. Both him and Aloe, if they don't mind, they have had some lived experiences here.
James, can I have the shop? Julia, can I have the shop, please?
I'm sorry, I don't know who that is. And both have channeled them to be powers for good. So they're taking their lived experience. Aloe is now a part of Aloe, raise your hand. Aloe is a part of now the New York State Youth Justice Council. He's taking all of his lived experiences and now channeling them to be powers for good to help change the narrative for young people. Jaquan Wallace is now the city's United Youth Leader on Cure Violence for the city of Mount Vernon, and he's a part of the national initiative. And so I'm so proud of these brothers who are taking their, when they talk about being better leaders, they're taking their leadership and putting it into action, and how better than to do that. And then Jasmine herself becoming a mom. I seen Jasmine from the day she walked in there to the day she is now. This woman has done a complete turnaround, and I love what they're doing in regards to taking their leadership and using it to kind of help change their long-term trajectory, but also change the narrative for people coming behind them. And so we have to applaud them. They might not know everything. We don't know everything, but the fact they're channeling whatever good they have to be powers for good in their community, we salute you three tonight, okay? I love you
Absolutely.
all.
Absolutely.
We love you too, Miss Dunn. Yeah, you know your son gotta see you. He getting big. You go ahead. He getting big.
Ms. Yogi, real short, anything to close?
Listen, I just want to say that young people are the solution, not the problem. I think we need to stop looking at them as the problem, and we need to understand that something happened to them. Nothing is wrong with them. I think we have an approach of what's wrong with you, and there's nothing wrong with our kids. And when we stick that in their head, they start to believe that. So the way that we speak to our kids, the words that we use, all of that matters. As the young lady was talking about kids with guns, Miss Jordan discussed, the way that we talk to our kids. From the time a little boy falls off a bike and we tell him don't cry because he's a boy and he got to man up, right? We got to stop there. When we present, we always talk about cultural traits, like kids aren't to be heard, they to be seen. And it's like, that was the day we took our kids' power away, because we took their voice away, and they need their voice and we need to listen.
Thank you so very much. As I turn this over, we'll move to our next segment. I just want to again thank you all. And as this next segment is going to lead more into responding a little bit, and for some of the adults here to really grasp what has been said and take the conversation a little further for our students that are involved. Please know, these adults that are on here, in some form or fashion, including myself, have been in your space. It was in a different time and a different place, as was said. Guns were not as prevalent, but a beat down was almost every day. Either you were giving it or getting it. So there is some understanding, but we're trying to make sure we are understanding you in this time and in this place. Thank you so much. It was wonderful being your moderator, and my prayers are with all of us and you. Thank you.
Thank you, Terrence. And I want to thank Joanne and her team and these wonderful young people and Ms. Yogi and their efforts in changing the narrative. And I want to thank Terrence for moderating this panel. We're going to be moving into the adult section, and I know that Joanne and Ms. Yogi are going to stay with us. But before we do, we said early on that violence generally is a public health concern, and we have the Westchester County legislator who's leading health disparities, and her name is County Legislator Jewel Williams Johnson. And Ms. Johnson, if you could just say a few words looking at health, public health, and the health of our community, the health of our young people. Would you say just a few words, introduce yourself, and then we're going to go right into our adult panel. And that is Jewel Williams Johnson.
Thank you so much, Deacon Williams. I really appreciate that. I'm not going to say a lot because I thought this was so insightful and so interesting. I commented in the thread early on that a lot of what was said spoke to a lack of hope. But as the conversation evolved, I realized that the unsafe factor is the priority, that if you don't feel safe, how can you have hope? And the brother, when he asked, what do you mean by hope? I think that says it all. As you indicated, I chair the Board of Legislators Health Committee, and we have held committee meetings on gun violence, being a national pediatric public health crisis. We've run a concurrent series on interpersonal skills and how to relate better to each other, no matter what age you are. And of course, I fully support our youth board and Dr. Damien Aman Harris and our youth bureaus. And so thankful for you, Frank and Terrence and and Ms. Dunn. But I'm really, it's front of mind, you know, that we need to increase funding for programs. And I promise to, as I said, keep that front of mind, and particularly when budget season comes around next fall. I will say a thought that came to mind is that I worked for a lot of nonprofits over the years, and in the educational realm, they were always trying to think of new ways to culture and affect better learning experiences. And I know we have charter schools and after-school programs, but I'm thinking particularly of NYU, who started a school for their professors and alumni children. And they just started the school day later because they found that children learn best from mid-afternoon on, from noontime-ish on, and later in the afternoon. So they shifted their hours to later in the day. And I'm going to look into that, and because there are parents who work and you know, their families would benefit if their children went later in the day and they wouldn't have to spend so much on daycare and what have you. So we have to look at all avenues and all alternatives. And please know that I'm open to any suggestions and always have the concern of the community and our young people. It's said all the time, but I don't think we invest enough that our children are our future. So thank you again for this opportunity, and I'm going to shut up and listen the more.
Well, thank you, Ms. Johnson, and thank you for your leadership and for what you're doing to put a face on all of our health disparities, and we thank you so much. This next session is, we're bringing adult members to speak to what they've heard from these young people, including Ms. Yogi and Joanne again. Reverend Urian Trollinger has been in this fight. He's worked in group homes. He's been engaged with youth at risk almost throughout his lifetime, in fact, dealing with these many issues and challenges. And so he's moderating this panel with former Mayor Andre Rainey from Peekskill, and Mayor Rainey is part of a national effort now looking at parenting issues, and Juan Ramos, who is from New York City and has been engaged in these efforts for many years. He speaks up and speaks out about how do we solve the problem, how do we make our communities healthy. You're going to hear from him as well, along with Joanne and Ms. Yogi. So Reverend Trollinger, take it away.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm grateful for being here, and I'm grateful to hear from our young people on tonight. And I'm going to be as careful as I can so that we can get quality information from all of our participants on tonight. I have a slight script, and then I'm going to share with you what I heard, and then we're going to move forward. And it says, we listen to other people all the time, but how often do we really pause and tune in to what they are really saying? There's a big difference between processing information and truly listening with our minds and our hearts. A step needs to be taken simply from hearing to being an active listener. Developing the skills is a participation thing, especially when it comes down to our young people. Are we participating when they are speaking to us? And so I thought about that as we listen to young people, do we listen with intent, and do we listen mindfully of what they are saying? And if we're doing that, then we learn not to interrupt them, to ask thoughtful, meaningful questions. And I wrote down demonstrating a real, authentic interest in what they are really trying to tell us. So on tonight, I listened very intently to what our young people have said. And so for my portion of the part with our panelists that are going to speak tonight, talk to us, I ask you to share with us what your organization and your heart is in regards to what our youth said about their environment, finding a better way, their challenging environments that they grow up in, the violence that comes in many types of traumas and different type of levels, they said. They said that nothing is in our community for us. And then they said to us, got or beget, fight or flight. The profound was, what do you mean by hope? The young brother said, and the challenging was death or jail. Which one do you choose? And then the last thing that I wrote down that the young person said, I'm looking for a better leader because that would give me some hope. So we have some fantastic people that are going to help us on tonight, but I'm going to turn it over as well to my brother and my friend, Mayor Rainey, to do his thing right now, and then we'll move forward in our conversations. Mayor Rainey?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be a part of this discussion tonight. My name is Andre Rainey, former mayor of Peekskill, New York, current chair of the National Parents Organization, New York affiliate, and also the current vice president of Fathers Are Important, based out of Long Island, New York. And, you know, working with the children has always been a passion of mine. Listening to the children is something I do for a life, as a lifestyle. It's just something I've always been interested in doing and giving the children a voice. So all of the curators and organizers of this event today, I thank you for giving these young children an opportunity to speak. In the National Parents Organization, one of the things that we try to do is find different ways to resolve family issues after divorce and separation, so the kids don't end up losing contact with one of the parents. We've learned in so many studies and stats over the last 15 to 20 years that a lot of children who are growing up in fatherless homes, in fact, 87% of the children who grew up in fatherless homes, 80% of the people that we have incarcerated grew up in fatherless homes. So one of the main aspects that we try to focus on is finding ways to create resolution and finding ways to allocate money for mediation for parents after divorce and separation to ensure that the children still have the involvement of both parents. Also, it helps prevent generational curses, which a lot of us can attest to or speak on. You know, some of us grew up without fathers, and some of us grew up in single parent homes, single mother homes. And it has a long-term impact on these children that we try to help address in a National Parents Organization. And we also do whatever we can to create more opportunities for children. You know, one of the key factors is we have this program where we court watch, and what we do is we visit different courts throughout the entire state of New York to see and make sure that the law guardians, for example, that are appointed to children, you know, we get the background on the law guardian and ensure that the law guardian is doing the best and making the best choice for the child. You know, there are situations where women are in abusive relationships and the law guardian only has about 15 minutes to make a decision on where this child should go without doing a background check or investigating. And of course, as you know, in family court, that's one of the few courts where there is no jury of peers. You just have one judge or one person making a decision for the rest of your life. So part of our job is to make sure that we investigate law guardians as they make the decisions for these children. Unfortunately, when we go to these courtrooms, the majority of the children that we see and the majority of the relationships that seem to be falling apart are the Black and Brown community relationships. So we found ways in places in other states so far. We haven't actually succeeded in New York just yet, But we found ways in other states to create what they call shared parenting bills, where the kid is not affected by losing a parent after divorce or separation. And studies have shown that in places like Kentucky, Arkansas, West Virginia, Hawaii, Arizona, domestic violence rates since these shared parenting bills passed has gone down about 40% statewide in each of these states. So our ultimate goal is to try to find out what the core issue is to what our children are going through, try to restore that family style. I heard one of the children mention earlier the fact that you want leaders. When we were growing, at least when I was growing up, where I grew up, I came from a two-family home. A two-parent home, my mother and my father. But we had those community people that would put you in your place if mom wasn't home. We had those people in the community that put you in your place if dad wasn't home. And I hate to say this so loud, but it was so different back then that in my neighborhood, mom would, 12 years old, 11 years old, mom would leave. Don't you open that door. And she would call the lady next door. I'm gonna leave and run to the store real quick and just keep an eye, because we had a community full of love. And I think that, trying to restore that community love is key, but it's the challenge that we're finding is the distractions, the social media, the cell phones, the tablets, the iPads, the iPhones. Like, we would have to do this on a more consistent basis to keep the attention of our youth. But my organization, again, we focus on trying to restore families, restore and find financing to allocate for mediation after divorce, separation, and of course, for the mental health needs of children that go through separation and divorce or don't have one of their parents in their lives. But thank you all for welcoming me here. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is, panelists, so that we can get the richness of everybody's conversation, is I'm going to ask some questions, and I prayerfully hope that you will be able to answer them. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to bring out your creativity so that we can grab some good nuggets. I have my cell phone ready for 3 minutes. If I go like this, it means wrap it up, because I want to be able to build this pyramid so that when we reach the apex, we'll have something that is eternal and it's going to be lasting, solid. So, Sister Yogi, I want to ask you a question. And my question is, how does I want you to introduce your organization, but my question is, how does your organization deal with youth that have challenging environments and helping that young person find a better way?
So my name is Yogi, and my organization is Teens Under Construction. I am a licensed clinician by trade, and I run this nonprofit with my partner, Shamar Watson. So what we do, what we have done is bring our culture into the therapeutic space, right? So, and the reason why we've done that is because therapy is not necessarily conducive for everyone. And as a person of color, therapy is something that we've never really discussed, at least when I was growing up. So what we did was that we just kind of put a switch on it and allow young people to come into the space, and we teach them different things, right? We have different workshops. So we really start with just communication. What is communication? What it looks like? We discuss that, right? And the importance to acknowledge your own feelings and what you do with those. So we provide like writing classes so they can get to put all this information, all their feelings into this lyrical content, because for a lot of the kids that we work to, that's what they're connected to, music, right? They're always listening to something. And what they're listening to a lot of the times is really somebody else telling their story. And what we do is that we give them the platform to tell their story in their version, and we allow them the studio to do so. So it changes the format of being in an office space, telling a stranger all your business. I mean, we come from homes where what happened in the house stays in the house, right? And then we send our kids to therapy and they can't disclose everything. So them really using the studio and utilizing the ability to share their feelings and their thoughts in writing has just really been proven to be what they need, at least the young people that we work with. And I say for, because I feel like I work for them. And just to wrap that up, we at Teens Under Construction, we don't get no funding. We provide services, we have service contracts, we are not funded by anyone at this time. So all the work that we do is strictly by either providing a service or just really just investing our time in the young people.
Okay, you did that good, Ms. Yogi, in 1 minute and 57 seconds.
Hey, you got something else? I got some more.
You stopped. You stopped, Ms. Yogi. And I like what you said, bringing culture into your therapeutic space, because I used to be in charge of an intake unit at Abbott House in a foster care agency. And I took down Mickey Mouse, I took down Donald Duck, and I put Martin, Coretta, Malcolm X, and everybody else in the spaces, went to Bronx, found me some Latino and Hispanic leadership, put their posters up, and made it happen in that unit. And when I went to my group home in White Plains, I turned the whole thing around and made sure that it looked like the culture of the people that was in there, you know. So that was good. Miss Joanne, I need to ask you as well. There you go. There you go. Miss Joanne, so I've been to your place underneath the former administration. I haven't got an invite to come since under your administration. I'm messing with you for an invite. But how is that place that you have taken over? And I loved how it used to be. I've been there years ago. But how is it that you have those young, beautiful, energetic young brothers there? I had a foster son that was in there for a while. And how is that environment switched in regards to coming from this challenging place? And now they're given the opportunity, they're not to be in Valhalla, but to be in your space. How does that work in your particular organization?
Sure. So I think the key word about the youth shelter is that we're an alternative to incarceration. And so the beauty of us being an alternative is that we can use, you know, everyone likes to throw around this word restorative justice and restorative practices. And for us, really what we do is we are trying to restore young people back to the foundation that they can be young and dream about their futures. When you're a young person and you become the sum of your circumstances, sometimes all you can see is that four walls that's been surrounding you your entire life. And so the youth shelter has been under a transformation the last 2 years. I came in the height of January 2020. We were in a post raise the age legislation. So the youth shelter was no longer working with minor youth under the age of 17. So a lot of our work prior to 2020 was in family court. And so, you know, young people then were transit. And so young people would stay maybe 30 to 90 days at the shelter. But when you talk about young people at the age of 18, you know, in the state of New York, you can still be charged as an adult at the age of 18. And so our work here has pivoted because we shifted to really ages 18 to 24. And when you talk about, you know, a young person in New York State, you can be served jail time for criminal possession of a weapon is 1 to 3 years. So when you talk about someone serving 2 years here at the shelter, that's an extensive amount of time, right? You went from serving young people 90 days to now average time here is 10 months. But I think the beauty of the shelter is we really, you know, I say we give love here. For a lot of these young people, when they come in the doors and we say, you're smart, you're beautiful, you're kind, you are worthy, you are God's chosen, you know, we're affirming them and uplifting them. And for many of them, they haven't heard that. And so the youth shelter here is really embedded in what we call sensitive accountability. Yes, we're going to hold young people, you know, accountable for the crime that they committed, but not necessarily for the crime. They have to serve their time. They're already being accountable for that. But while they're here, what are we doing to transform their lives? And that's really what the work is about at the youth shelter. But if I would add, as a mother of 2 Black sons, let me say this. While I love the work of the Residential Alternative to Incarceration program, one of the things that I've been really hinged on is that for another 40 years, I'm not willing to run another youth jail. Let me be very clear. because technically that is what the youth shelter is. We are a youth jail. And as a woman of color that has 2 Black sons, one of the things that I've learned in this work for the last 2 years, that if we don't embed in community diversion and getting to young people before they get incarcerated, then we're just as big as the problem, right? Because then we're also perpetuating systems that have failed these young people for years. And so for me, our work is really now, if you see the evolution of the shelter, I know I'm on time, but if you see the evolution of the shelter, we are really getting into community diversions. So we're doing a lot of emerging adult courts. We're also doing diversionary program, because one of the things is we've learned that community is not, while we talk about family as the building block, community is the bedrock of foundation. And so if these young people can attach to community entities, then we're not doing our justice. And so the youth shelter is really coming full circle to really open up to do community diversion program and really catch young people before they have to serve jail time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to switch up, and Brother Juan, I want to ask you a question. And the question is, one of the young people talked about violence. And what I heard him say, that there's trauma on all different types of levels, right? All types of, so when we think about, you know, we see what's happening in California and we say that's violence, you know, but we're talking about young people. And so the trauma of violence on different levels, how does your organization address that?
Well, thank you for having me. I just want to say thank you to all the young people that gave up their true self. It's hard to come on and speak to adults who sometimes don't always listen. So I want to just thank them for doing that, and thank everybody else for sharing their experiences with us as well. I think, you know, when we look at trauma in particular, is something that is very close, in particular in communities of color, right? We suffer trauma on multiple levels. But when we talk about the issue of trauma, one of the things that we seldom look at is that trauma is all around us. It's in all the institutions that impact us. It's in all the systems that are there that are supposed to be helping us, right? So when we look at it, we have to look at the trauma that the young men, in particular in our community, are facing every single day around what some of the young men here shared, right? How do I stay safe in my own community? And sometimes safety for us looks like a lot of different things. Safety for us means safety from one another. Safety can mean safety from the police. It can mean safety from those, things in our community that are there that are not set up in a way that are there to benefit us. You know, everything from food insecurity to, how clean your community is, right? We have to look at all these things and understand that they all connect, right? Because I can't tell a young person to put down a gun if I'm not telling him how he is supposed to help his parents who are without jobs find ways to bring food into the house, right? So we have to see how all these things connect. We also have to understand that, and that's why I appreciate Sister Dunn and the other sister who spoke, because when we look at community-based organizations, we have to make sure that we don't become the business of those organizations, and that the business of those organizations are our youth, right? All too often we have fly-by-night programs that come into our community and they claim to help us or people that look like us, but they build a career and build organizations on the backs of the people that are suffering. And we had to be a little bit more thoughtful about that, intentional about that, and say no more. So when we talk about trauma, let's not forget that there are different levels of trauma, and that trauma doesn't only start at, the level on the streets for the young people in our lives and in our communities. Trauma can begin at home. When we talk about lived experiences, I don't do this work because of me wanting to stop violence in my community. I want to stop violence in my community because I experienced that violence myself, right? And the first time before I picked up a gun and tried to shoot somebody, the first time I picked up a gun was to try to stop my stepfather from beating on my mother at home. That's just the reality. That's the first time I picked up a gun, right? I then picked it up because on the street because it was easier to hurt somebody that wasn't close to me, wasn't related to me, wasn't somebody that was supposed to be protecting me. So it was even easier to use violence against someone who wasn't connected to me in that level. So we have to understand that trauma begins in different places for different people, and that it's very real, right? A lot of our young people live with, when their parents live with a level of PTSD that's real. We don't talk about these things. We talk about these things as they relate to people that are, you know, maybe serving in the military or things like that. But those things exist in our community. Our young people are living those experiences. So we have to, again, address these issues from the perspective of how do we help that young person. And one other thing I just wanted to address really quickly is, you know, we can be funded as much as we can as programs, but the reality is that, you know, our young people talked about having jobs. How am I supposed to compete giving someone a stipend for $235 a week with someone who's offering them to give them, you know, $1,000 a week for selling something on a corner, or getting, you know, guns into somebody else's hands? We need to be more thoughtful about what we do with our young people. And I understand that resources are limited, but you know what? If we find funds to continue to do things that are not working, why not reinvest those funds into positive things that are going to go directly into the hands of our young people? And those are some of the things that we need to start pushing back on. You know, our program, for example, looks at violence, and we want to work with those that are closest to the problem. So we work directly with the shooters or those most likely to be shot. You know, we work with young people at the point where they've been shot and they're in the emergency room and they call us in. And when we go to that emergency room, we don't go there like the police to, you know, police them further. We don't go there like the hospital staff that's supposed to take care of their wounds. We go there and the first thing we say is, how you feeling? How you doing? I know what it is to be in that position that you've been, right? And that opens up a whole level of a different type of conversation that we have with that individual. And from that perspective, we begin the process of undoing further harm, because once we get them to speak to us and trust us, we're able to see where their mind is about possible retaliation that we can stop on the ground back in our community. Right. So this is the type of work that we're doing, and the type of work that should be invested in.
You got more to add to us, because I got some more questions. Okay. So we're gonna get into some more things. My brother Rainey, there is violence on all type of levels in regards to emotional trauma, drama, and trouble that affects our children in fathering, having a father's presence in the house, or having no father presence in the house. How does having a father in the house or having a father's presence in the lives of their children help de-escalate some of the trauma?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you worded it that way, because you always, you know, one of the things that we've learned in this organization is, you know, you never want to make it seem as if one parent is better than the other. A mother is better than the father is better than the mother. The idea is to ensure that both parents are actively involved in a child's life. It creates a different balance, and you know, statistically, we can produce numbers all day long. You know, like I said, the statistic rate in New York State right now, 87% of the people incarcerated grew up in fatherless homes. There's statistics that show that 62% of children that drop out grew up in fatherless homes. So there's plenty of data and research that can show the importance of not just having a father's involvement, but having both parents co-parenting, or both parents that are married or together, working together to raise these children. And also, it's, some of the core issues that we're finding is the generational curses. It's not, like I look at my generation, my colleague of friends, like a lot of my friends that I grew up with just in my hometown, they had children before they were ready to be parents, before they were ready to get past their stage of childhood. They're still mentally, they're still young. So they're not doing what they should do as an active parent. But it is a proven fact that having both parents involved actively in your children's lives makes a positive difference almost by 97% for every child. And the other issue that I really want to remind people about, and this is kind of what we take on, is the challenges that you get when you're in family court. You know, when you go into family court, in order to gain custody of your children, you have to pretty much pin one parent against the other. There's no shared parenting in the state of New York. So when you see people that have no fault divorces, they kind of just say, we're not in love anymore, we don't want to be together anymore. But then they go into family court and then they have to fight over custody. And that's when it gets really bad, not only for the two parents to co-parent, but for the children. And like I said, in the state of Kentucky, the millions and millions of dollars that the taxpayers were paying to pay appointed attorneys is now going to mediation for parents after divorce or separation. And that impact, which people don't realize as well, has a very, very strong negative impact on the children. And as Juan was speaking about trauma earlier, when children see their two parents fighting at age 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, by the time they're 13 and 14, that mentality is theirs. And the last thing I'll say is a lot of the guys or men that I grew up without fathers, and they had support systems. We try to find ways to give these children support systems, whether it's some of the fellas from the organization, some of the mothers from the organization, to give these kids an opportunity once a week to speak to us as a group, to let us know how they feel, what they're going through, what they need, what challenges they have. And conversation goes a long way. When I grew up, I could reach out to auntie, uncle, mommy, cousin, brother, sister. We try to tell these children to help. We try to help these children create what they call, natural support systems to help them get through all of the stuff that they're faced with. And as Juan mentioned, that the trauma is real. And it's very important that not only do we give the kids a voice, but we look at some of the core issues. And when you take away a father from a home, or you take away either parent from a home, you destroy the family structure. You destroy the family structure, you destroy the community structure. When you destroy the community structure, you destroy society. And I think that's part of the reason why we are where we are now.
I thoroughly agree. Now, I have a bad reputation of messing up people's names real bad. From church to anywhere, I mess up people's names. So I have a brother who is the activist, advocate, and youth violence expert. And I think he works for the White Plains Youth Bureau. Horrendous. Is he on? Brother Frank?
Who's that Reverend Trollinger you're trying to reach out?
Yeah, Hezouyes.
Yeah, no, he's not. He didn't show up. No.
Oh, okay. That's even better. That's even better. So I don't even have to butcher his name during this whole process. Thank you. I appreciate that, because my members know I can mess up a name in a minute. All right, let's move on. And I want to say to everyone that in full disclosure, my dad raised me and my brother. Okay, my mother did something and went away for a little while and did her journey. But my dad raised me and my brother. And I really think because how he raised us, we both ended up becoming counselors and workers in foster care. And, and I know my concentration with young people, even in prison, is because of what he really instilled inside of us. All right. So one of the young brothers said this, and I'll let Yogi, you're not getting your time back. You're not getting the extra 1 minute that you had. So don't get happy, because I know I feel your spirit. All right. I'm a preacher. I can feel your spirit. All right.
You feel
all right.
Right.
All right. I know you. I know you feel it. I know your spirit right now, because you'll say, I got that other minute that I didn't use. I'm gonna use it now. No. So Yogi, this is what I heard. The young people said this, then an adult said something was powerful. The young person says there's nothing to do in our communities. There's nothing in our communities for us, right? But Yogi, then somebody had the premeditated gall to say, and it might have been you, is that we open up places or use places where they have been traumatized.
I won't take the credit credit for saying that. I think that was someone from YSOW, but I am completely in agreement with that, right? So I agree with that. As a school social worker, I see a lot of kids disconnected from school. I was a disconnected youth, right? Whenever I tell my story doesn't start off, where everybody else's stories start off. My story starts off as I'm a high school dropout and a teen parent. I was homeless with my kids. I was one of them shoot 'em up girls. We were selling dope. I'm from Hunts Point in the South Bronx. So by the time I was 12 or 13, I was running the street with grown people. I was the person carrying the gun because I was only 13. So chances are that I could probably not face a charge quicker than the kid that was 17 who can't catch a charge. So when I talk about kids not having places, when I talk about school in particular, right? Some of our young Black and brown males, they feel like targets in our school, right? Because they're consistently being targeted, right? The concept of them being the bad kid, right? Even when we talk about IEPs and 504s, as a teen mom, my oldest son, who's 28 years old now, suffered from ADHD. I had no idea what that meant. I was at a table full of people that didn't look like me or my kid, telling me about this ADHD that my kid had that I never heard of, and dictating to me what my kid was to do or not to do, right? And had this label on that my kid was bad. And my kid's like the smartest person I know. He's like my favorite human being. So in understanding that, right, you start to turn away from those spaces and you start to create your own being. My office is around the corner from the Coachman here in White Plains. I just met with a parent from there that's like their recreation center is closed, right? They don't have nobody to run it, nobody to watch the kids. So I reached out to some community partners. We're gonna open a drop-in center. We don't get no funding for it, but you know what? We figure it out here in the space. We go to some food, we go to some restaurants. I love begging for food. We feeding 50 Wednesday night. We're gonna have a drop-in center. This is the location. And Reverend, the kids show up. They show up. We have dance, we have rap, we have people come in to talk about DJ classes. We have police officers come in and talk to our kids about what they need to know, what language they need to know. If they get pulled over, what does that look like? How does an officer try to push your buttons, right? How your female friend in the passenger side could play a part in how you respond, right? So there's just so many pieces. So when we open these places, they have to be teen geared. In my school, I opened up my office. The staff in my school have absolutely changed the name of my office. My office is in a corner and we call it Bodega Dreams because everybody comes to my office. And it's usually Black and brown boys. They come into my space, they sit down, and these young men want to be heard. But when we start throwing things at them, like they're not supposed to think like that, or they're not supposed to feel like that, and those are the responses we should be asking. We should be asking, why are they feeling like that? Not that they shouldn't feel like that. Our experience here, when our kids walk through this door, literally 10, 20 minutes in, they're comfortable and they share that. They'll look at us and say, for some reason, I feel real comfortable here. And that to me, that's the icing on the cake. I need nothing else to continue to do what I'm doing. And I do what I do. My why of why I do this is because I've been that kid. I've been to juvenile detention. I was in a group home somewhere in Long Island that I jumped out of a window when I was 13 trying to get out of. So because I've been through that walk of life, I think that I come in with a different perspective towards them. I get it. I understand what it is to fight or fight. I understand what those pieces are. And just my final quote, even though I get it, it's still so different. When I got home, I could close my door and I closed everything that was outside with it. Today, kids will come home and this is in their phones. If you got punched in the eye and you ain't do nothing, not only your neighbor gonna know it, not only your boys gonna know it, people in Yonkers are gonna know, in the Bronx, across the world, they're gonna know you got punched in the eye and didn't do nothing about it. And I gotta live with that. And the question is, can I? And if I can't, now I have to show the world that what I'm made of. And a lot of those pieces start to just unravel and become intangible.
I gave you your minute and 27 seconds. Okay. And Miss Yogi, I'm gonna say it again. You have not called me yet. You haven't called me yet. You gotta see my space, Miss Yogi. You gotta see my space. I'm right down from the Coachman. You gotta see my space.
I'll be there. I'm gonna give you a call tomorrow, promise.
It's available, okay? Miss Dunn, I'm throwing it back to you in regard to the community places and opening up places, because you said something about you're developing community partnerships, okay? And I'm interested in that, okay? But what is that all about for the young people that are in your custody? You know, what does that look like?
Sure. So let me also say, beyond the young people that are here to serve their jail time, we work with hundreds of community youth. And one of the things is, while the youth shelter is housed in Mount Vernon, we get young people from Peekskill, North Castle, Bedford, Katona, every part of this county. And I think what we understand now more than ever is that while you might live in a certain place that you call home, it is not necessarily your community. It is not a place where you feel safe, you feel loved, or you feel respected. So one of the things that we have done here at the shelter, and really learning from our young people, and I do want to give a plug here, in the height of gun violence, which was a couple of years ago in the midst of COVID, we put in a proposal to the County Youth Bureau, and we said, we want to propose this youth-led, community-based initiative called Youth Cred. And the County Youth Bureau, they heard us out, and then they funded us for this pilot project that we call Youth Cred. Youth Cred allowed us to learn so much. We took what we call the misguided leadership, the raw talents of our young people who have lived experience in the justice system, and really took them through, if anybody knows it, the New York State Division of Criminal Justice SNUG training, which is gun spelled backwards. We took them through that training to allow them to become youth credible messengers, but then also to figure out, how do we sponsor, or like, how do we get youth-led solutions here? And when we did that, we learned a lot. And so someone had up here about how churches are open, you know, our doors are always open. I'm gonna say not so. Just because, you know, one of the things that we learned from our young people, particularly here in Mount Vernon and in Yonkers, you know, we surveyed them, we did a close call with them. Damia can tell you about it, Dr. Harris Madden. And they said, you know, the churches, there's a church on every corner, there's a church on every block, but is that a place that we can go to? I remember our first couple of Youth Cred initiatives were called to clergy, right? We did a call to clergy and we said, hey, clergy, we want to bridge relationships with the church membership with our young people. And really, is a church a safe space or a drop-in where a young person could come? Now, we had some churches show up and many did not, because you know what? There was no resource to come with it. And it's a true phenomenon. Let's be honest. If there's no money attached to it or no insurance, you know, churches are like, hey, we're going to stay away from it. We're closing our community center. But I think what we've learned is that we have to take young people out of the places that have caused them trauma. So here at the youth shelter, we have 2 vans. Our vans are from maybe 2009. They're about almost 20 years old. They're terrible, but what we've learned is, like, Aloe lives in Yonkers, but what we've learned is that Aloe can't be serviced in Yonkers. He doesn't feel comfortable in Yonkers yet to kind of unrobe and be connected to services there. So he comes here. Just like we have other young people that live here in Mount Vernon, we have to take them to services in Yonkers or in other places. And I think that that's when Jordan talks about how we have to blow things up and not act in the traditional spaces, because I think sometimes we get very territorial in regards to that. It's our program, it's my solution, it's this. No, when we're talking about violence, it's going to take every last one of us to cure it. And it's going to have to take a really like community-based effort to understand that we can't cure it alone. And there's not a one-size-fit-all approach here. And so understanding that community comes from all kinds of prongs, that we're going to need your resources, your services, your funding. And like the youth shelter, we're an independent nonprofit. So the beauty is I get to kind of say what we're going to do. So when the height of it, we open our doors now to 1 a.m. Our community center is now open to 1 a.m. We pivoted all our day programming to night program. So we have night school now where all of our young people are showing up. When we had class at 11 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, guess what? Nobody showed up. So we had to pivot. And what we understood is that if we're going to really act in the peak hours of where gun violence is happening, we have to open up our doors and be ready to receive our young people. So we're literally open to 1 a.m. every night. Our staff are here. I'm here. As you can tell, I'm still in the office. My husband is on the call. But this work for me is personal. And it's really about making sure that I'm not just talking the talk, but I'm walking the walk and I'm in it every day, all day. And so we talk about how you have to be 10 toes deep down in it. And that's really what we're about. And I think like Juan said, we're trying to really embed, youth voices in this work that we're doing and really try to elevate that.
Excellent, excellent. And please give me a call as well.
I will.
Please give me a call as
You
well.
know I
Listen, your young men used to come to our church years ago. So, and they were part of many programs that we held with the African American men's program that we would do in partnership. So,
Can I add a point here, though? I
yes,
think
go
that
ahead.
one of the things is that we have to look at our definition of youth too, because we say that, technically by law at 18, they're adults. And so many a times the young people I service now are up to 25 years of age.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people won't touch them. They won't engage with them because they're adults. And it's like, if brain science tells us that they're not, till the age of 26, even later, where they become adults, and that's that transition to adulthood. I really think that we as adults or mature adults have to wrap our brain around that young people are still in this transitional phase, even in their early to mid 20s.
I agree. Juan, my question to you is, one of the young men said, and my brother Rainey, I want you to jump on it afterwards. He said, got or begat? What's our response to that? What's your response to that? Got or beget?
I think when we hear that, for me, what I hear is I'm either gonna survive my community or be gone from my community. And the reality is that a lot of us, as young men in our communities of color in particular, that's how we've lived our lives. Is either I'm gonna be ready for whatever's coming, or that's gonna take me out. Right. And, we hear this concept and it doesn't happen in a way where everybody's carrying a gun. I mean, I had a circumstance in my community, for example, where there was beef with rival groups and, the police was trying to stop them all, trying to see who had the guns on them. But the reality is that the youth are very smart. What they did was, they had, what could be perceived as a community gun, and use all the disinvestments in their community to keep that gun safe. So when the police was overlooking the fact that there was a rubble of trash by the park, that's where the gun was. That's where they will go get it, right? When the police would overlook that they can get into fights or get into situations under a scaffolding at the Knights of Development, because nobody's going to be looking at them in this dark place and nobody really cares about the Knights of Development, that's where things happen. Right. So our youth have learned how to survive their community in ways that we can never imagine. Right. So their survival has become me understanding my communities in ways that you never have, because I've been the one that has had to survive my community. Right. And that's just a reality. I want to get him before he gets me. And we've been taught, because of this, again, oppression that we suffer by the disinvestments in our community and everything else that has been oppressive toward people of color in our communities, that we see each other sometimes as our own biggest enemy, right? Because somehow you're more of a threat to me than that person I know is actually a threat to me. I can get to you sooner, right? Because those other elements know how to keep us away. They allow the violence to take place in our communities because, again, it's nothing new. If you look at our communities and how they've been set up, it's almost an architecture that took place a long time ago to keep it that way. And it was developed, designed. We look at violence sometimes and ask ourselves, how does the environment relate to the violence? Well, we have to understand that everything in our community, especially for young men of color, is violent. From the disinvestments in their community, from, in New York City, I've been hearing everyone talk about, community centers open up till late. And I'm glad that we have that conversation, because in New York City, we've had that, but not too many young people go to them, because the reality is that a lot, again, coming back to the point that we have to make sure that the people that are running these programs understand the young people that they're working with, right? So from everything from who you hire to how you run your centers is going to be, you know, meaningful, because the reality is that some of those centers have programming, but some of that programming is not the programming that our young people are looking for. So if you as an executive, if you as a worker at one of those centers are not doing your job and getting up from behind your comfortable desk and walking that community to have the conversation with the youth that are not coming into your center, then you're not doing your job at all, right? Because the ones who want to receive the help are going, but the ones that don't know how to ask for help are not entering your doors. And those are the ones we have to go out and seek, because those are the ones that most likely are the ones getting into trouble. And we have to push that, because if we don't push that, no one's going to push it. We're just going to leave it up to the police to police our kids. And we already know what happens when they get policed, right? You know, nothing ever has come out positive from that experience, right? And we can, you know, we've also tried so many things in New York City, for example, you know, from midnight basketball leagues to all these things. But the reality is, again, if they're not intentional and led by the youth themselves, they will never work.
Right, right.
I'll try to make it brief, Resman. I do want to say that I you know, that mentality, it's in my opinion, a lot of that is coming from what we're being fed now by our sources of outlets. When it comes to what we see on YouTube, when it comes to what we hear in the children's music now, and they got this new drill music and all of this stuff, like they're feeding this to our children, I think, more than I've ever seen. You know, when we grew up, at least when I grew up, it wasn't, you know, I heard a guy say in an interview a couple of months ago that from the 1900s to 1960s, the average Black man who was in the music industry made music about love, family, and survival. And when he said survival, it was kind of like not go kill and rob survival, but it was like, you know, change gonna come, you know, Sam Cooke survival. And they've found a way to like shove this stuff into our culture, and that mentality becomes cool. So now holding a gun in a video is cool. Now drinking with your boys at age 16 and 17 and pouring out liquor and smoking weed in the video is cool. And another issue that I have with that is I see parents in some of these videos with their minor children smoking weed, pouring out liquor and waving fake guns in the videos, because they in our culture, I think that they've tried to make that cool. And like I said at the beginning of this, we'd have to do something like this almost weekly to catch up with what these children are being distracted by, in order to try to change that mentality, because we're not just going against the children and their experiences, but we're going against what they see every day, what their friends see every day. And one more statement I'll end off is one of my friends told me in the conversation about this not too long ago, sometimes you'll have to save your son's friends in order to save your son.
Wow. Wow, thank you. I'm going to pause for a second, and I'm going to invite Dr. Harris Madden to come and join us in this conversation. Dr. Harris Madden.
Good evening. I'm here. I'm a little under the weather and juggling multiple meetings, but I have to say all that I've heard tonight has just been very powerful and impactful. So I congratulate everyone who has shared their thoughts. And you know, I'm deeply impressed and moved, and not because this topic is one that, you know, deserves that, because unfortunately we're here to talk about that, but just because the commitment that has been seen is just tremendous. So thank you, Rev. And I don't know that there's much more I can add. You know, I think that the speakers have just really nailed every point. I appreciate the fact that, you know, the Westchester County Youth Bureau has been uplifted, because for those of us who know us, they know that since we've come into this administration, we've been very intentional about funding organizations that are non-traditional, that are creating opportunities and not so much, you know, hanging on to services. They're creating pathways and changing trajectories in non-traditional ways. And the way we do that is by working with the grassroots organizations, looking at the various aspects of the community and not relying on status quo. So, you know, I don't know that I could add much more value other than to say, I appreciate everything that's been said, and everybody that has spoken for the most part, knows my number, knows what we're about, and know we're trying to create impact.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Yogi, there was a statement that was made, and I don't think we didn't have the answer. But when the young man said death or jail, how does an organization such as yours try to address that statement?
I want to know the why. I need to understand what's happening. It's a conversation that needs to be had. If you're choosing between jail and death, we've missed the mark. And I think it's important to find out where we missed the mark and what that individual needs to be safe, and that their safety is not reliant on them going to jail. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, I'm not directly from the area. I've been in the area for about 20 years, because my escape was Yonkers. And a lot of people looked at me like, Yonkers? I'm coming from Hunts Point in the Bronx, right? So the only place I could go that was different, I found Yonkers, and I moved with my kids, right? Because when you're caught up in that space, and there's an adrenaline that comes with being in the streets. And for the most part, when you make it home at night, you won that day, and there's an adrenaline that comes with that, right? Dr. Dre, Ice Cube has a song that says, "I can't believe today was a good day." And when he get home, he's really puzzled that he didn't get shot, that he didn't have a problem. And so what we do is that we challenge those youth to really figure out what their need is and do our best to fulfill that, whether it is connecting them with different opportunities or providing opportunities for them here directly. One of the programs that we do is directly at DOC. So we're in the jail, in their jail cells with them, and we know what that feeling is like. It takes us longer to get into the jail than the program runs, right? They have no rights to nothing. We're working with tiny little pencils, right, so that they can write their stories. And it's really listening to their story. And sometimes we don't get that story until we sit back and we listen to what they wrote when they rapped in that studio. And their stories they're not a walk in the park. When those young men get released, we got packages for them: sneakers, clothing, toothpaste, deodorant, resume building time. We sit them at the board table. They're not just a client, they're part of the organization. They're not just somebody we service. They're part of what we do and who we are. And I think that that's where we go to allow them to be part of something, to feel part of something, and to really share their knowledge. They're full of knowledge. So we utilize those people to help us continue to do the work that we do, because we're not the experts, they are. They're the experts of their lives. So they're the ones who tell us what they need, and then it's up to us to do what we can to provide that.
To understand the why.
Understand the why. Yes, I'm
Understand.
about the why.
Yeah, understand. That's powerful. That's powerful. Ms. Dunn, what would you say about death or jail?
I understand it. I would say that when you have walked in these young people's situations, and I'll just give you an example. This weekend, I was away at my brother's wedding, and a young person called me in crisis, and he said, I have no place to go. I would be, stuck in a laundromat. And I have to tell you, in essence, our residential facility is a youth jail. So when you come here, you have to abide by no cell phones, sleeping in a shared room, going under the program protocols. And, because this young person was so destitute, he said, I'm willing to come back to the shelter. I'm willing to comply again with the quote unquote jail principles of the shelter in regards to, have to wake up at a certain time, have to sleep. Not saying that we run it like a jail, but because he was so destitute and he had no other outlet, he was willing to comply. And so while it's not the mindset that we want our young people to have, I understand it. I understand that when you're in a place of desperation and you're in a place of, I'm not sure what to do, you go with your knee-jerk reaction. And I have to tell you that this at least quote unquote youth jail is probably safer than some of these other places that young people are at. And this youth jail, quote unquote, the youth shelter is probably better than some of the homes that these young people live in. When we talk about family, family doesn't exist like it did when we were growing up. I think Andre said it, you know, and so our young people, they're in a time that it's unprecedented times for our young people. And while we might not understand it, I can actually, you know, for me, my heart goes out to them. And so, you know, we opened up our place and we let this young person come in. And while it's not the mindset we want them to be, but we completely understand it. And we want to be a safe zone. And when they're in crisis, I always tell, my husband can tell you, when they're in crisis, I want you to say WJD, not what would Jesus do? What would Joanne Dunn do? Call me in the midst of that time. Jordan can tell you, it'll be 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, Miss Dunn, help. And we're right there because we understand the power of when they're in crisis, if we don't respond, we've lost them. I've lost them. And so honestly, that's what we're doing. And I really want to play something for you guys at the end of this, if you allow me, because our young people through Youth Cred came up with, you know, they did an EP, which, you know, we barely had anybody out, but they came up with this song, We Need a Change. And it talks about like how, you know, if someone would have gave them the book or a gun, if somebody would have been a mentor to them, if somebody would have got to them before they got in trouble, if they'd have knew about these resources before they got locked up, maybe they could have been better people. And so we talk a lot about this. So, you know, when we talk about the power of a second chance and the power of restoring young people, that's where I'm at. I don't care how they got to me, but now that they're here, it is my responsibility and my you know, diligence on this earth to make sure that they leave out a better person because of me. If not, I have reharmed, re-traumatized, re-offended these young people. And so for me, it is my personal obligation to make sure that they leave me, Joanne Dunn, as a better person, as a better individual.
Powerful. Frank, I'm not too sure about my time, so
Yeah,
talk to me.
You're done, Reverend Trollinger. Well, we want to let's give Reverend Trollinger a big hand, or thumb, or wave, or whatever. This has been an evening in which we have responded to hearing the voices of our young people. We know that we have work to do, but we have work to do. And there's a lot of good things that are happening. We heard Donnie talked about education. We heard I think Joanne and Jordan talk about community diversion. We know we don't have enough resources. We know that our young people are traumatized. We know that our young people need extended services and weekend services. They need training and they need caring connection with adults. Now, I will say, adults may have some fear of our young people, right? We got to get away from being fearful of our young people to being advocates and activists of our young people. Because when we are afraid of our young people, we create more trauma. So we have to, as adults, as caring adults, as people who love our community, our nation, we have to get in the fight with our children, right? We do, because we know, and we say our young people are the future. And if there are young people in the future, we have to be with them side by side. We know that our kids need jobs and housing and resources and mentors, right? So I want to say to us, this work will go as far as we align ourselves with our young people. We as fathers and community agencies and resources, we're not going to quit. You know, we have these wonderful grandpas, these men who are retired, and they are in the fight with our young people. They're mentoring, they're in youth corps, they're doing counseling. We need other grandpas and other fathers and uncles and brothers. And the data is very clear, as Brother Rainey said. Most people who are in prison are there because their father was not there. So our fathers got to be back in the race. Our churches have to open our doors. You know, we know, there are churches on every corner, almost in every community. They open when kids are out of school. We have to fix that. So I want to say to all of us, I'm going to turn this over to Barbara, and I'm going to come back. Barbara's going to talk about the evaluation, right, Barbara? And then she's going to talk further about resources. And then if you need a copy of tonight's video, let us know, and we'll give you a copy of tonight's video. So Barbara, please weigh in with resources and supports.
Hi, everybody. I think Tom is going to speak first about feedback that we need in order to prepare for the future.
Yes, why don't we do this because of time? While Barbara's speaking, I'm going to put up well, no, I'm not going to. After Barbara speaks and before Frank speaks, I'm going to put up a survey that will only take about a minute. It's 3 quick questions. You just check them off. And then there'll be a longer survey in the email follow-up afterwards with the video and everything. So, Barbara?
Okay, thank you. And I am going to a PowerPoint, and I want to make sure I go to the right one. And my name is Barbara Andrews, and I'm with the Administration for Children and Families, which is part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And this has been such a thought-provoking and inspiring evening. And I want to thank all of the speakers, the facilitator, the panelists, both young and not so young panelists. You've really given all of us a lot to think about. And no doubt about it, it's challenging to be the last segment on a program like this. But one thing that we have always tried to do during the 8 New York Fathering Conferences is to share information resources, or what I like to call news you can use. Can everyone see my screen? I'll go through this very quickly. You will get a resource list, so you don't have to worry about copying down the URLs unless you want to visit one of those websites tonight. Since our focus tonight was on youth, I want to let everyone know that the federal government has lots of resources that I'll be talking about tonight. And they're free as long as you can get to the internet. There's lots of good material that you can download, lots of research that's already been compiled for you if you're researching a particular topic. But on the youth.gov website, the focus is on positive youth development. There are all kinds of topics, just a few of them I've highlighted on this very crowded slide. Information for youth, information for programs that are serving youth. Topics include, employment, financial education, violence prevention, a lot about all different topics that make sense for programs and people. Then a subset of youth.gov is Youth Engaged for Change. And again, on the bottom of this slide, I have some of the items that are highlighted throughout the website. The focus is on opportunities, answers, and inspiration. And this website could learn something from our program tonight. There's also, and I have to move my group of people, but there's also a whole segment about career pathways. Last time that we were together in November, you heard someone speak from the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse. That website, www.fatherhood.gov, is an example of what's available. There's information about starting fatherhood programs, sustaining fatherhood programs. There are resources for fathers and father-serving organizations. There are even virtual collaborative communities where fatherhood programs from all over the country talk to each other. And there's also a hotline or a helpline, a national call center, 1-877-4DAD, 411. So 1-877-4DAD-411. And you can talk to a real person about different issues and different challenges that fathers may be going through. And they, talk to, there's an actual person at the other end of the line who you can talk to. The Administration for Children and Families also funds responsible fatherhood programs and also relationship education for youth, including a program that is based out of the Mount Vernon Youth Bureau. Now, parents and families, you may be interested in visiting the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center. I know we're not talking about the little children tonight. We're talking about the later section of the lifespan, but all adults start as children, and the seeds of adulthood are sown in childhood. So parents and programs can reference materials and access materials at the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center. There is information there about father involvement. There's information about all aspects of child development as well. And there are lots of resources that have been compiled very thoughtfully. I think most people have probably heard of the Head Start program and Early Head Start, and these are resources that are available that were originally prepared for the Head Start programs, but now they're available to everybody. One of the programs that the Administration for Children and Families funds is the Child Welfare Program, Title IV-E, and a host of programs having to do with positive child rearing and preventing child abuse and ensuring that children grow up to be responsible youth and responsible adults. You can download a free copy of the Prevention Resource Guide. The one I have posted is the latest. It's the 2021 to 2022 edition. And as new editions become available, they are posted online. And like I said, it's free. And some materials have been translated into Spanish, and there's a lot of pull-out guides as well. Community leaders, regardless of your age, and you can be a leader, we know, at quite a young age. We've heard some leaders tonight speak from the on the youth panel. I want to call your attention to some resources from the U.S. Department of Justice and the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And like I said, all these resources will be sent to you after our program. And there are resources for community-based violence intervention and prevention. One of the things that we like to provide during these conferences is information about helplines and hotlines. Last year, the 988 Crisis and Suicide Lifeline was launched. This is for anyone who is struggling or in a crisis. They can get help 24/7. You can even call on behalf of another person to find out what might be the best course of action. And like I said, you can call or text 988. The Domestic Violence National Hotline is available, again, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And the hotline, I'll send these numbers. It's available by text, by phone, and also more and more of the national hotlines and clearinghouses. There is an option if you want to talk live to someone. And again, this is for people who are in a situation involving family violence. And we've heard about trauma tonight, and we've talked about experiences with trauma, and this may be very helpful for people who are in a traumatic situation. Since we're talking about youth tonight, I would be remiss if I did not mention the National Runaway Safe Line. Again, 24/7 and reachable by phone, by email, or for an online chat. A person need not have run away to call the hotline. It can be someone who's a young person who is just in a tough situation and want to talk it out with someone. I know that programs, and this is, a rough segue, but I know that programs always want to know about funding. So I want to turn your attention to grants.gov. This is a pictorial of some of the services and resources that are available through grants.gov. And I'm very happy to talk to people on an individual basis, or maybe sometime in a group situation, about what's available through grants.gov. It's pretty easy to navigate, but I've had a lot of experience talking people through it and showing them how they can register to get messages when a funding opportunity comes up that they have expressed some interest in, or created an account. Then they'll send you a message so you can get the announcement as early as possible. But there are a lot of resources on grants.gov about grant writing and accessing resources. January is National Human Trafficking Prevention Month, and it's very sad to know how many youth and even older people are victimized by individuals who are involved in trafficking in persons. Victims of human trafficking, they can be any age, they can be any race, they can be any ethnicity, any sex, any gender identity or orientation, any religion, any class, any education. And during National Human Trafficking Prevention Month, we're really trying to highlight the resources that exist and let people know that there is a helpline. Again, online, texting, chatting, or talking on the phone. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they're available. And there's also a TTY connection. January is also National Mentoring Month, and I know we have a contingent online tonight from Grandpas United, and the grandpas are mentors. And many of us on this call tonight are mentors. So even though this is not a federal website, I want to call your attention to it and encourage you to look at the resources that they have available. Next month, February, is National Teen Dating Awareness Month, and it's a good time to highlight positive relationships among young people. So again, there are some resources available here, and I will be sending those out afterwards. So I promised I would not take very long. I wanted to go through that very quickly. And if you do want to contact me, my email address is barbara.andrews@acf.hhs.gov. We will be sending out a contact sheet with the names, affiliations, and email addresses of those individuals who have been speaking tonight and also who have been involved in planning this conference. So I will throw the mic back to Tom. Thank you all for being here and staying.
Okay, so let's do the survey in about a minute and a half. I'm going to launch it right now. And it should be up. And just look at the 3 questions and answer from your just from your first reaction. And it's got a cool feature where it shows as it's going what the responses are. Do you all see that too? The results of the survey? Okay.
Yeah.
And then Frank, as looks like almost everyone is answering and finishing up. So do you want to
Yeah.
have some closing remarks?
Yes, so again, I want to thank Reverend Trollinger and Juan Ramos and Joanne Dunn and Ms. Yogi and Mayor Andre Rainey and our young people from Mount Vernon, from our young people of promise from the Mount Vernon Youth Shelter and the participants from Teen Under Construction and all of you for being with us this evening. Our Father Conference is done in 3 sessions. Our first session was done on November 15th. It was really exceptional. If you want a copy of that video along with this one, just send us an email and we'd love to email you both series of conversations around creating healthy communities. Our next session, the third and last session, is on March 21st, 2023, and we're looking at a response to strengthening and creating healthy communities. And we're looking at it from the point of view of economic and social well-being. Again, we're looking at models, best practices, programs that are working. And we know that even hearing tonight about the challenges that our young people are facing, we need to be looking at how to do new, effective things. So many of our programs close at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and the young people need places to go at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock. So many of our youth programs are not even open on the weekend. Where are our young people spending their after-school time? We have to fix what's broken, and we cannot be afraid to do that. I want to thank our fathering committee, everyone, our grandfathers, and everyone for making this evening a great success. So tune in with us again on March 21st, 2023, as we conclude the series of strengthening our communities and building our fathers in our community. So thank you so very much. Have a wonderful evening and good night.
Good night.